Alright, everybody. So as we're going to start off here with our study of the Middle Ages, we have to figure out who rules Europe after the Romans. And we know the Romans had this huge, huge area of land. They ruled, almost all of Europe, and we know that the Western Roman Empire fell. The last day we talked about 476 AD. And so why did it fall again? Remember, think about what we talked about last semester. We had bad rulers, rulers that were selfish, rulers that did things to themselves. You had rulers that were replaced very, very often with money issues. We had inflation in terms of the coinage, in terms of how much silver is in the Roman coin, using those coins to pay soldiers. And we had loyalty issues. The soldiers would only fight the more they got paid. We had the size of the empire being so big it was really hard to defend. The number one issue we had with Rome was the invasion by Germanic tribes. We didn't really talk much about the Germanic tribes, who they really were. So we're going to hit on that a little bit today and kind of see who's left in Rome, in the former Rome, I should say, after 476 AD. So we have this idea of Germanic tribes, this Germanic culture. And where are they from? Well, they're from modern day Germany, kind of that northeastern section of Europe. And they had a very unique kind of economy. Their economy was based off trade with each other. Typically, the Romans had a big, huge national economy. They had coins, that kind of thing. You didn't see that kind of idea in the Germanic culture. It was very much economy based on trade, small farming, not on huge international trade. They're also a war culture. They're big into fighting, as you can see in the image up here. They were big into fighting. They fought a lot. They fought each other. They fought Rome. It was a big way that things were changed in terms of their culture. Now, in terms of the religion, things are very different there too. By this time, Rome had become Christian. Uh, they consider the Germanic group to be barbarians. Now they speak a different language, Germanic tongues that later on become modern day German and English and that kind of stuff. But they had very different religion. They believed in something called Valhalla, a bunch of different gods. Valhalla was kind of the heaven, if you will, kind of the afterlife where a good warrior would go. But in terms of religion, they also had a lot of different gods that serve different things. And we see some of those modern day gods in our modern day days of the week. There's God named Tu, God named Woden, Thor, God of Thunder. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are all definitely parts of kind of the religions that existed in these Germanic groups. Eventually, a lot of Germanic groups become Christian due to kind of the Roman Empire, kind of what was left there. Also, missionaries going to different groups, converting kings, those kind of things. But the culture is very, very different than the culture we saw in Rome. And especially in terms of justice, or how they dealt with their laws. There's something called Vergild. We'll say Wergild, but it's Vergild. It basically meant what a man was worth, what you did wrong. So if someone got killed, you had to pay a fine to recoup what that guy was worth. And a lot of times they had different types of trials to prove your guilt or your innocence. And so we had two kinds of trials. First, a trial by ordeal. So basically, trial by ordeal meant that if you survived this idea, this trial, this thing you had to do, it meant you were guilty or innocent of the crime. So, for example, one would be a trial by fire. They would take a hot coal, they would put it in your hand. If you could hang on to that hot coal for 3 or 4 seconds and let it go without any damage to your hand, it meant you might be innocent. They also may have a trial by water. They'd take a pot of boiling water. They would have you plunge your hand into that pot of boiling water with a little pebble in it, holding a little pebble, and then take your hand out, bandage it up. They'd have somebody look at your hand after a couple of days, and based off how much your hand healed, it was your guilt or your innocence. There's also trial by combat. If you had a disagreement with somebody, you may fight that person, and whoever wins the fight will be innocent. So definitely a very, very kind of justice, kind of how the laws were kept in the Germanic area. Very, very different. After Rome collapses, we see these different groups that live here. All these different groups that kind of take over after the collapse of Rome. You can see where they're all located here. We have Angles and Saxons up here, but definitely a lot of times these groups are decided by their language. Angles, Saxons, who are from northern Germany, they give us modern day English. What they speak is called Old English, kind of the precursor of modern English we speak. We have Burgundians who live down here in southern France. Their language becomes modern day France, along with the Franks right here. The Britons eventually moved to what's now called Britain. We have the Lombards. You ever heard the term Lombardy, like Vince Lombardi? They lived in Italy, northern Italy right here, the region called Lombardy, and took over Italy. We have Visigoths and those kind of groups take over in Spain, eventually take over by the Umayyads, the Islamic empires. And we have Ostrogoths, who rule down here in what's now was a former Rome. Eventually, they fight with the old Eastern Roman Empire. So I mean, we've all these different groups that are there, all these different languages, those kind of things. Rome was the what's now former Rome is very very different than it was the time of the Roman Empire, as those different groups are making their own kingdoms and their own groups. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, I mean, meanwhile in eastern part of Europe, we have things look very, very different. The eastern part of Europe is still very much Rome, as because it's ruled by a group called the Byzantines. So here we have, backtrack 300 AD, we have Rome split. Here's the Western Empire, here's the Eastern Empire, there's Rome, there's Constantinople, followed by Constantine. And remember, only this part right here fell. The eastern part is still basically Rome. And it was ruled after collapse, a new Byzantine emperor named Justinian came to power. Justinian the First was he was kind of the guy who kind of wanted to bring the old Roman Empire back and make the Byzantine Empire, based around Constantinople, as great as the Roman Empire had been. And so he did what Romans did best: conquer the crap out of stuff. He went through and started conquering. He went to all the places that Rome had lost through wars. Egypt, went and got it back. North Africa, Carthage, went and got it back. Greece, went and got it back. He tried getting back the rest of Rome, but didn't work so well for him. One thing he did do was try to make the law codes come back. Very, very different than the Vergil of Western Europe with the Germanic tribes. He took the Roman law, those 12 tables, and tried to simplify the code and make it easier to follow. So it's called the Justinian Code. A lot of times these laws reflect his wife, Theodora. She was actually a dancer that he found to like, and eventually, even though she was a common person, became his wife. But she pushed a lot of the laws to change them so that it would become so that the laws are a little more fair for women. A lot of the laws also made it so that every single thing that person did, made it so that it would make the Byzantine Empire better. So through the laws of fishing, hunting, those kind of things, all the money was going to their empire, or trying to make it better so the empire can make more money off those kind of ideas. Now, Theodora had a lot of impact in terms of Justinian's life. He truly did love her, that kind of stuff, and so she had a lot of impact in choosing leaders. So she kind of helped choose leaders she thought would make her life better, make life for women better in the Byzantine Empire. Not everybody liked that though. There's a place called the Hippodrome. Here's a hippodrome right here in Rome, in Constantinople, excuse me. And it was kind of like a big horse racing stadium. It's actually Greek in origin. A hippo means horse in Greek, and it was kind of, and Drome was kind of the place, kind of the area of the horse. And so what they basically did was they would race horses here. It's very, very huge, huge stadium. I can still have pillars in the middle here and the obelisk, those kind of things. It was used by Justinian, but it was used by Justinian for numerous things. Not only was it used for racing, it was also his place of public execution. At one point, there was a revolt called the Nika Revolt. Basically, some of the upper class Byzantine people didn't like the way that Justinian was running things. They had a lot of problems in Constantinople from time to time. They had a plague that came through, modern day plague we talk about. They had a lot of advisors that maybe weren't the best advisors. And so people started revolting because of the advisors that were not being picked necessarily by Justinian, but being picked by his wife. And so when this riot happened, Justinian got his army out. He brought upwards of 200,000 people were talking into the Hippodrome and watched all the rioters be executed. And it's kind of his way of public show of force, trying to show, hey, don't mess with me. I know that I can take you guys down, and if you try to go against me, I'm going to kill you all. And so that's kind of where his brutality comes into a little bit in those realm of the former Roman empires as well. The Byzantine economy is a big thing. I mean, right here is Constantinople, over here, and Byzantine became a big power because they control all the trade. Being right here, they control all the trade from China, the Middle East, going into Europe. And so you can tax things that are coming in back and forth. You can, kind of you basically connect everything. And the biggest thing that they wanted to control was silk. Right here, these are silk eggs, silkworms. Silk comes from a worm in China. When you take the threads woven into very soft, silky textured material. This was the number one thing the rich guys wanted over here in Western Europe. And all the silk that came through had to come from China right through to Constantinople into Western Europe. Well, China put controls on who could control silk. They actually made it so that silkworms could not leave China. A couple monks, set by Justinian, went to China, They smuggled out silkworms, and they started making their own silk in Constantinople, and actually ended the monopoly on Chinese silk trade, and made Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire, a very, very rich place. And we have to the split in Christianity. So in Byzantine Empire, they had what's called the Orthodox Church. We had a couple of split that happened earlier. And the biggest difference between the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church was that the use of pictures. Kind of like in Islam, in the Orthodox Church, they thought that pictures of God, Christ, Jesus, whoever, were forbidden. Kind of like how Islam does not show pictures of Allah, does not show pictures of Muhammad. In Western Europe, pictures are used all the time because a lot of people, very, very few people could read or write. And so pictures are used to teach about stuff. We'll talk about that a little later on. And so this led to a big split. In 1054, it's called the Great Schism. Schism just being split, where the church split. You have the Roman Catholic Church in the western part, and you have the Eastern Greek Orthodox Church in the Byzantine Empire. And so this church kind of splits right down the middle that way. Here's the difference we have, okay? In terms of the Greek Orthodox Church, it's based in Constantinople. All their language is in Greek. They're led by a patriarch, kind of a guy in charge called a bishop. And the bishops could not marry, but priests could marry. So your priest or a pastor could marry somebody. And everything was based off the book, off the Bible. Scriptures were the final authority on everything. And so it's kind of very strict in terms of how everything is done that way. And actually, the bishop himself had to answer to the emperor. Things are a little different in the Roman Catholic Church, okay? The Roman Catholic Church, it was based in Rome, first of all. It's Roman Catholic. They used Latin as their language because they were in Rome. They're led by the Pope, which we'll talk about a little later on. And church leaders could not marry. It doesn't matter if you're a bishop or a priest, whoever, church leaders were not allowed to marry anybody. And only the Pope and bishops could interpret the Bible. Over here, everyone could use the Bible. Only here, it was the Pope and the bishop could interpret the scriptures. And the Pope was the supreme head of the church, and he was above political rulers. Where over here we see the emperor was above the church rulers. So over here, the Roman Catholic Church is a lot more power kind of given to the upper part of the church, versus over here in the Eastern Orthodox Church, where a lot less power is given that way. And that's kind of the big difference we see between the two churches here. There's one last thing I want to show you guys from Constantinople, and it's a really cool building called the Hagia Sophia. And it's actually a building built by Justinian. It's a huge, huge building designed as the Greek Orthodox church, kind of a big, huge basilica. And it was just a ginormous building. You see the huge dome on top of here. We have the spires and the minarets, which is definitely an Islamic or a Middle Eastern influence over here. And it was a huge dome, these big, huge minarets. Here's the inside of it. You can see the inside of the church. It's a gigantic building. It contains a lot of relics, which are the old, kind of the bones, the blood of the old saints, burials of very famous emperors and people. And later on, when Constantinople was taken over by the Ottoman Empire, a Muslim group, it becomes a mosque. And so this is a very, very important building, very cool building to see in Constantinople. That's it for this one. This is due on Friday. Make sure that you guys have this all completed for me. We'll discuss it, and we'll go a little more in depth on kind of life in the Middle Ages. Here we go. Thank you very much.